Hello and welcome. A Boston socialite holds seances in the 1920s, attracts fans like Arthur Conan Doyle and WB Yeats, and ends up in a very public battle of wits with Harry Houdini. Oh, and the whole story is narrated by her dead brother. I'm Carol Cram, host of the Art and Fiction podcast. My guest today is Maryka Biaggio, author of Marjory and Me. Welcome to the Art and Fiction podcast, Maryka.
Thank you. Glad to be here with you, Carol.
Margery Crandon is fascinating, but a relatively obscure historical figure. I'd certainly never heard of her. So, how did you first stumble across her story? What made you think, yes, this is my next novel?
Well, I had recently published my debut novel, Parlor Games, with Doubleday, and my editor at Doubleday sent me this book. Let's
Hold
see,
back. There it is. The
there,
Witch of
The
Lime
Witch of
Street.
Lime Street. And it's all about Margery Crandon and Harry Houdini, and also just about the spiritualism craze of the
Yeah.
1920s.
Yeah.
I set it aside and because I was working on something else. And then I went back to it and I read this novel and I thought, and it's a nonfiction book.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, this
Uh-huh.
really is a fascinating character. And it had so much going for it. I mean, she was a celebrity at the time. She
Yeah.
was a rags to riches story. She grew
Yeah.
up on a poor farm in Canada and made it as a high society wife. There were celebrities like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle involved, and of course, Houdini.
Yeah.
You had this epic battle between her and Houdini. And then the public debate about spiritualism, it was so rich. I
Yeah.
felt like, yes, I'm doing this.
I'm just in awe that you found that and then that you made the leap from that to this novel, which is so clever. It's just, I just loved it. So you chose to narrate the novel by Walter, her dead brother,
Yeah.
which is a huge, bold structural choice. So why did you decide to do that? Where did you get that idea?
Yeah. I feel like voice is one of the most important aspects of any novel.
Yeah.
And it usually takes me some time to find the voice. So I'll be researching the subjects and the events and trying to think about writing character sketches about the people and trying to think about, okay, now who's going to tell this story? Whose story is it to tell?
Yeah.
And who can tell it the best? And I was really struggling with that. Then all of a sudden, I mean, Walter started speaking to me. And it was so cool. I mean, to me, writing is 90% just struggling to get the words down and everything, and 10% magic. And when that magic happens, I just love it. And
Yeah.
that's what happened. Walter started speaking. And I grew up with three brothers.
Ah,
So it wasn't that hard for that voice to channel through me. And I thought, yeah, this is it. I want Walter to tell the story, and he's really well situated to tell the story.
yeah.
So, interestingly enough, my editor at Doubleday, when I brought her this idea and gave her a chapter or two to read, she said, "No, Marjory has to tell the story."
Oh,
But I thought, no,
no,
this
no.
this is the novel I'm going to write. Maybe you're not going to like it, you're not going to acquire it. Okay, but this is what I'm going to
Yeah.
do. It worked
And
for me.
And it was the right choice because Walter is such a great foil for Mina, Marjorie, and the Times because he
Yeah.
was this sort of irreverent
Yes.
guy. And I loved all your similes. You've got some of the best similes that
Yeah.
are very folksy. Like, how did you know a person like that?
Well, it's like I say, some of it is magic
Yeah,
when it starts, then when the character starts speaking to you. And that character just took over a part of my
yeah.
psyche.
Okay.
And so I felt like, in a way, I was a ventriloquist for Walter. And having grown up in the Midwest, not too far from where Walter and Mina grew up, just across the border in Ontario on a farm, I had some sense
Yeah.
of the language of that place. Now, in terms of the period, Of course, I did have to make sure that the language fit the period.
Yeah, that's
And
always a challenge, isn't it?
yes, what I often do for that is to make sure I'm getting that right is I read novels that were written at the
Yeah,
time.
that's a good idea. Yeah,
And
yeah,
I also read newspaper reports from
yeah,
the period. And that helps me to get a sense of the language and have that sensibility
yeah.
for the period.
Yeah, Walter's got to go down as one of the all-time great characters. You did a wonderful job with him.
Thank you.
So, at the core of the novel, or one of the things, is that the Scientific American, which of course is true, offered $2,500 prize to any medium who could demonstrate paranormal ability, right?
Yes.
So Marjory's husband entered her in the contest, and it set off this whole showdown with Houdini. So,
Hmm.
as you were researching, did you find yourself sympathizing more with Marjory or with Houdini?
More with Marjorie
Yeah.
because she wanted to be welcomed in Boston high society.
Yes.
And being a medium became very much a part of her wish to make it as a high society wife because her
Yeah.
husband was a noteworthy surgeon of the
Yeah.
time who had himself published a couple books and was a well-respected, not just a surgeon, but a teacher. So I definitely sympathized more with Marjorie. But Houdini is a fascinating character. So
Yes.
it was interesting to learn more about him as well.
I guess I liked how you portrayed Houdini because I knew nothing about him. Yeah, he was a little bit unpleasant, though, wasn't he?
Yes, he became quite obsessed. Interestingly, he started out having some interest in spiritualism. And after his mother died, he attended some seances hoping to make contact with her. And then he
Oh,
became disillusioned because he felt like the things that some of these mediums were saying about his mother were, he thought, completely bogus. So
oh,
then he basically went on this huge crusade and was included on the Scientific American Prize Committee, started, in fact, going around the country and doing shows
wow.
and saying, here's some of the tricks that these mediums do. So he went really public with this crusade of his.
Wow, it's amazing. I'm wondering why the early 20s, spiritualism was so popular.
Yeah, spiritualism has come in and out of popularity, and the 1920s was one of the waves of great public popularity. It followed on the heels of the Great War
Yeah.
and the flu epidemic of 1919. And so many people died in the war, young people. And the flu epidemic also took mostly young people. Older people
Yes.
seem to have developed an immunity to it.
Yeah.
So here we have families, they were losing husbands, sons, fathers in the war, and then this big epidemic and another huge loss of life. And people were just hungry to make contact. They were so bereaved. And this just gave rise to a lot of mediums all around, not just in this country, but in the UK.
Oh,
Mediums
yeah.
became very popular as well, and in France too.
Yeah, that's interesting. It does make sense because of the Great War, for sure.
Mhm.
So you have a few famous people in this book, in addition to Houdini, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and
Mhm.
William Butler Yeats were among
Yes.
Marjory's admirers.
Mhm.
So, what was it like writing scenes involving such famous people? How do you decide how much creative license to take with actual figures?
Yeah. Fortunately, I did have some material that, in terms of some of the types of conversations that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle had and his beliefs, because he wrote articles about
Yeah,
spiritualism. So I did have a good foundation to go on in terms of what his views of spirituality were. So
yeah,
it wasn't, but I felt like I didn't want to stretch the truth. I really wanted to try to be true to his particular beliefs. And he and Dr. Crandon did have a corresponding relationship.
yeah.
Marjory and Dr. Crandon did go to London and meet with him. So all those things happened. So I didn't really have to stretch too far to, I think, pretty accurately represent Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's perspectives.
Yeah, that was very interesting because I don't know much about him either. This is why we read. We get to find out new
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, I mean, not that many people know. I mean, obviously he's known for Sherlock Holmes,
Yeah.
but he was a very strong proponent of spiritualism.
Did he ever change that opinion or did he hold out till he died, as far as you know?
He held it till the end. He was a
Wow.
pretty, yeah, he was pretty
Yeah.
much a
He died
believer.
quite young, didn't he? Was he?
Yeah, he wasn't that old. He might have been in his 60s,
Oh, okay.
which for that time period wasn't
Seems
terribly.
young now.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So your novel deliberately leaves ambiguous whether Walter's narration is supernatural or something else entirely. So how do you write a novel about spiritualism and keep that question alive without tipping your hand? Because you never do.
I really wanted this novel to appeal to everybody, regardless of their beliefs. Most modern readers probably do not subscribe to spiritualism, but I wanted them to understand why so many people subscribed to it and believed in it and give a flavor of what some of these seances really looked like. So I did purposefully try to provide the social context for this belief in spiritualism.
Yes.
And yes, I wanted people who both were maybe detractors as well as, I mean, I have some friends, when I told them I was writing this book, they said, let's have a seance. So I'm a believer. So I know people who really
Oh,
do
yeah.
believe in connecting with spirits or seeing ghosts or whatever. And I purposefully was careful through the whole writing so that everybody could enjoy it.
Yes.
And they can figure things out on their own, although I'll leave it at that.
Oh, yes. This is a book where you really don't want to know any spoilers at all
Yeah.
because it is so enjoyable. The ride that you take us on is just so much fun. I really enjoyed that. So, like me, you didn't begin writing novels until your middle later years
Yes.
after working decades as a professor of psychology. So, how do you think your background in psychology has helped you write your characters?
Yeah, I think I can't help but to use the knowledge that I have as a clinical psychologist in developing characters because, I know a lot about people's motives, what
Oh,
drives them to behave in certain ways, how desperation can drive them to certain limits. But I also know that one of the things that I lectured about when I was teaching about diagnostic categories is that there's no such thing as a true schizophrenic or a true multiple personality, that these are typologies. And then we try to pit their constructs that we've developed. And then we try to put the people in these bushel baskets. But
yeah.
everybody is unique.
Yes.
So I feel like, in a way, being a novelist is almost like a natural extension
Yes,
of
it is.
psychology because you're studying not just these groups of diagnostic peoples, but the individuals. And you
Individuals.
get to delve really deep and come up with individuals with their own very unique attributes.
Yeah. In a way, it is like being a teacher, because that's was my professional background was as a
Yeah,
teacher. You spend a
yeah,
lot of time with people and
yes,
dealing with individuals. So
right.
yeah, I hadn't actually thought about how my own career has helped develop characters. But yeah, I think you're right. And certainly
Hmm.
psychology, that makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
So Marika, would you like to do a short reading from Marjory and
Sure.
Me?
I'll read from the very beginning.
Always the best place.
Chapter 1. It's me, Walter, here to tell you about Mina. Truth is, I understand Mina better than the whole lot of them, meaning those meddlers who wanted to know how the Witch of Lime Street, as some dubbed her, acquired her psychic powers. Oh, the questions the newspaper men asked. Did her teachers remark on any unusual talents? What of her character? Was she raised in an honest Christian household? Was Marjorie ever struck by lightning or visited by visions? They all knew her as Marjorie, but I call her Mina because that's the name she grew up with. They asked Mina about me too. Tell us about that dead brother of yours. Did you summon him to your seances or did the rogue invite himself? Is it true at that seance with Houdini that Walter called him a money-grubbing snake? You bet I did. One reporter even had the nerve to suggest I was a gimmick Mina cooked up. Then, when Harry Houdini pledged to expose Mina as a fraud, the reporters showed up in droves, begging for a front row seat at the showdown, or, if not that, an exclusive on the day afterward. I could practically see their busybody noggins turning over possible headlines. Which would it be? Houdini proves famous psychic Marjory a fake? Or medium Marjory stumps Houdini, summons the dead? That would be me. People nowadays just want things to be simple. Like it was either one thing, I was a real spirit, or another, I was nothing but a ruse. But it's complicated. I wouldn't be telling this story if it was as simple as ABC, like those reporters and everybody else wanted it to be. I'm not saying there's no such things as spirit connections. Hell no. But they're rare, and circumstances must come together pretty much perfectly to conjure them. So this is going to take a lot of explaining. I might as well start at the beginning.
It's a wonderful beginning. And I'm sure when you were crafting that, you probably had a lot of fun because the dead brother bit comes in about what, about the fifth or sixth paragraph. And
Yeah,
that's when you suddenly went, oh,
yeah.
he's
Who's
not real.
narrating? Right,
Yeah, yeah,
right.
who's narrating?
Yeah, the
This
dead
is
brother,
narrated by
right.
a
Then,
ghost.
yeah.
And that just hooks you. So that was brilliant. That was why. How long did it take you to get that figured out?
Yeah, I think it was a few months into my research,
Yeah.
several months probably, before I figured out that I wanted Walter to be the narrator.
Well,
Yeah.
no, but once you got him as the narrator, but even just that way of crafting that opening, did that take a
Oh,
while?
no, as I say, once
Yeah, once,
once I
yeah,
got Walter, he just took over and he
yeah,
started talking to me. I mean, I had to think about how I wanted to structure it, what I wanted him to tell, but then it was pretty easy, just sitting down and then letting the magic happen.
yeah.
It
I
doesn't
know.
always happen. When it happens, it's so cool.
I can really feel that from reading that novel. Like as a novelist, I went, oh yeah, you actually were pretty much channeling, and I think that's what we all hope for.
Yeah.
And to find a voice like that that you can just let it speak. I don't think I've ever found that. So I'm going to keep looking because
It's,
you've
oh yeah.
inspired me
Oh,
to
cool.
open
Yeah.
myself up
Yeah.
to finding a voice like that that just tells the story. And
Right.
of course, as I said earlier, the way his folksy way of speaking and his similes were just delightful. So, what's one thing you learned from writing this novel that you didn't know before?
One of the things that I found really interesting was how very vociferous Houdini was
Ah,
in trying to debunk spiritualism. He went so far as to get a congressman in New York State to sponsor a bill in the US Congress
wow.
to outlaw say, spiritualist profiteering on seances.
Yeah.
So he got this bill introduced and it was in committee, and he went to Congress and testified for 4 days. About 300 spiritualists showed up, and it became so raucous when, because he was calling them charlatans and cheats and robbers, and they, of course, weren't sitting still to take this. And they had to terminate the hearings a couple of times and call in the police because things got so out of control. And as it ended up, the spiritualists were saying, well, we have the right, there's a right to religion here, and we're practicing religion. This is our beliefs. We believe that we can connect with the dead.
Yeah.
And that won the day, and the bill failed. So,
Interesting.
but Houdini tried as many different tactics as he could.
Wow, that's amazing. It's funny that he was so obsessed. Yeah.
Mhm.
But anyway, but yeah, what a great sort of thing to have in the middle of your novel to to revolve things around. So, speaking of research, of course, historical fiction relies on an incredible amount of
Yeah.
research. Can you share some of the methods that you use for research?
Yeah, I think a good nonfiction book about, I always write about real people. So
Yes.
if I can find a good nonfiction book, to me, that's gold, one that's really an authoritative book. And The Witch of Lime Street was that for me.
Yeah.
It's a little bit disorganized in how it's presents the topic because it's not only talking about Marjory and Houdini, but about the whole spiritualism movement of the time. It's some of it is a little bit confusing, and what I found myself, I use this software called Eon, which
Oh,
is a
yeah.
timeline software, and
Mm.
it
Oh,
fits
yeah.
really well with Scrivener. In fact, I think it's by the same people. So I use Eon while I'm reading because, as I say, The Witch of Lime Street wasn't very good in terms of being a nice chronological account. So then I start
Yeah.
plugging things into Eon so that I can keep track of them. Then I also found a couple of books that were written in the few decades after Marjory's turn in the 1920s. So those were close to the event and had interviews with some of the original people involved. So those were really interesting.
Yeah.
And newspaper articles. I
Yes.
really like going to newspaper.com and
Yeah.
looking up articles because they're so rich in terms of giving you a sense of the cultural context,
Yes. Yes.
in addition to the language
Yeah.
of the period. So those are my go-tos. And then, as I said, I like to read novels that were written at the same time to also give me a sense of the
Yeah.
period and
Well,
the language and the mores.
yeah, that's all good advice for authors who are looking to do more research. Do you want to share a little bit about your process, your writing routines?
Yeah, I'm very disciplined. I can
I'm not
say I
surprised by that, Maryka.
Yes, we've worked together. We
Yeah,
know
Maryka
each
and I
other.
know each other.
And I pretty much write every day unless I have some other activity that takes my time. But I get up, I go on my morning walk, I have my breakfast, I read the newspaper, and then I just go to my study and I sit there and I write for 2 to 3, maybe 4 hours if I'm on a roll. I like the mornings, they're my favorite time for writing. And I usually reserve the afternoons for research or for just general reading, because I feel like that's a really important thing that authors need to do is
Yes.
read.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, when I'm between, I usually have a few projects going at different stages,
Yeah.
like marketing one, because this is my sixth that's out now. So marketing this
Amazing.
one, working on another, getting ready to edit one that's going to be published in about a year from now. I do keep pretty busy, but I like to have the early morning hours, the 2 or 3 hours, that's really just for the creative
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, I find that's a good time to work as well. I still have to go out in order to write, but especially
Oh
when I'm
yeah.
writing a first draft, not
Uh-huh.
editing, but writing. I like
Yeah.
to go out to the cafe,
Yeah.
which is closed right now. I live on a
Oh
very small
no.
island and my
Yeah.
cafe is closed.
Oh my
They'll
gosh.
open it again soon.
I hope so.
Actually, I should mention here for our listeners that Marika and I worked together on the Historical Novel Society. We were both on the board for 4 years.
And I was on for additional 6 before that. No,
Yes,
no, more than
yes.
that, because I was on a total of, no, 10 years, a total of 10 years,
Wow. Yeah, no, that's a long time. 4 years was fabulous for me, but that was enough. Yeah, because it does dig into your writing time, as
yes,
we've discussed before.
for sure.
So, on that note, what are you working on now, if you're able to share it with us?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things that are in the works. The next novel that will probably be coming out in about a year, I wrote with a friend of mine, a co-writer of mine, who you know, Vanitha Sankaran.
Yeah.
I've always loved the oratorio by Carl Orff, Carmina
Yep.
Burana. It's
Yes.
really dramatic,
Yeah. It
and
is.
it's based on poetry written by fallen away monks and Goliards in the 11th, 12th, and 13th centuries. So, and the The music is really interesting, but the verses are also just fascinating. As you know, the Catholic Church was the prominent power at the time in Europe,
Yes.
and these verses were somewhat subversive because they
Oh.
criticized many aspects of the Catholic Church, specifically the corruption, the selling of
Mhm.
um, uh,
Well, the pardons, like the
yeah,
summoner and the pardoner in
yeah,
Chaucer. Yeah.
selling chances to get into purgatory or
Yeah.
heaven. And I mean, like the church, really, priests could do that, but they
Oh, yeah.
did. So anyway, I've always thought, wow, it would be really cool to write a story about some of these Goliards who wrote some of this subversive verse. And I was talking to,
Yeah.
but I don't have much background in the Middle Ages. So I was talking to Vinitha about this, and she said, I know the Middle Ages because her first novel is set in the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
So we decided we would co-write this novel.
Oh,
So it's a dual timeline. It's the story of a preservationist contemporary who discovers a manuscript that is actually the story of some of these Goliards who are on the run from a bishop who's trying to prosecute them for heresy because of the verses that they've written. So that's in press with Foundation's book publishers, and we'll be probably getting our first edit on that in short order and hope that it'll come out in about a year.
oh, fantastic. So what's it like co-writing? I've never done it.
Yeah, we had to figure out how we were going to divvy up the labor, and it's usually I'm more of a kind of a by the pants writer. I have this general idea in my mind of the story arc because I'm
Yeah.
working with real people and real events. But for this, it involved a little bit more imagination, and we could, and my seat of the pants approach wouldn't work
Yeah.
because we had to know where we were going. We had to know
Mhm.
what the chapters were going to be. We had to outline the story. We used Stormboard as a
Mm.
kind of a brainstorming and just started putting down our ideas about the characters and what was going to happen with the characters in the different chapters. And then for the contemporary storyline, how was that going to resonate? We had to do a lot of brainstorming.
Yeah.
So we did some writing retreats together.
Yeah.
We'd get together for like 4 or 5 days and talk like crazy and work, and then at dinner go out and drink. And so, but we did, it did take a little time to get into a groove and decide how to
Yeah.
divvy it up. So we divided the labor up. We both were doing some research and putting it up in a place where we could both work on it.
Yeah.
So, and then we developed a contract that would specify how we were going to divide the labor, what we were going to do about
Yeah.
expenses, what we were going to do about royalty and all that, how we were going to approach the publication. So we drew up a little contract in advance so that we would have some guidelines to go by. And it's worked really well for us.
So do you think it's easier or harder to co-write as
I think
opposed to
it's
on your own?
I think it's easier in some ways and harder in others. It's
Yeah.
harder in that you have to really come to the process and think it through and hammer it out with another person. And
Yeah.
for me, that's harder because it's not my natural way of working.
Hmm.
It's easier in that you're dividing up some of the labor.
Yeah.
Vinitha could research some aspects over here that I didn't need to bother with, but I could research stuff that I needed only to work on.
Yeah.
And then we could share the drafts with each other or critique each other, make sure that our styles were melding and everything. So it's
Hmm.
easier in that you are splitting some of the labor,
Yeah.
but harder in that you've got to get in there and grapple with how you're going to make this work.
Yeah. I'd like to try it. I haven't found anybody who wants to do it yet, but who knows? That might be
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
cards.
yeah.
Anyway, thanks so much for chatting with us about your new novel, Marjory and Me, Marika. This has just been great.
Great. Wonderful to talk to you, Carol. Thanks so much for having me.